Frederick Barker Turrington Turner was born in St. John's, Newfoundland in 1819. He elected the Newfoundland Parliament in 1851 and attended the Quebec Conference in 1864, although he could not get the other members of his own party behind the Confederation. Although he was re-elected as the Prime Minister of Newfoundland in 1865, he was defeated in 1869 during that year's election. He was re-elected again as the Prime Minister of Newfoundland from 1874 to 1878. Carter also became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the Union of Newfoundland from 1880 to 1898, when he resigned from that position. It was during this time that he became a valuable advisor to the different succession of Governor General of Newfoundland. Indeed, he even acted as the acting Governor General of Newfoundland several times during the absence of the actual Governors General. For this, he was knighted by Queen Victoria for his services to Newfoundland. Carter died aged 81 in St. John's in 1900. Shea was born in St. John's, Newfoundland as a young man. He worked as a journalist at his family's newspaper, called the Newfoundlander, which he inherited in the 1850s, after a series of deaths in his family left him with the entire newspaper business. In addition to being a journalist throughout his life, he was also a successful financier, ship owner, shipyard owner, and merchant. He also had many other business interests as well. Shea was first elected to the Parliament of Newfoundland following the first election after the implementation of a responsible government in 1855, having campaigned for that since the 1840s. In 1864, Shea attended the Quebec Conference. Although he himself was an enthusiastic supporter of Confederation, he was defeated in the 1869 election in Newfoundland, which he blamed on anti-Catholic feelings, as he was an Irish Roman Catholic himself, and his father and mother had both been born in County Tipperary in Ireland. However, he was re-elected to the Parliament of Newfoundland in 1874. Shea then turned his attention to the building of the railway across the island of Newfoundland, which was being an on-again, off-again side project for them. Ironically, it also meant that Newfoundland didn't go broke as everywhere else did, while trying to build the railway across the respective provinces. In 1883, Ambrose Shea received knighthood for his services to both Great Britain and to Newfoundland as well. What he was really looking forward to was the possibility of becoming Governor General of Newfoundland, but instead he was appointed as the Governor General of the Bahamas, where he served from 1887 to 1894. After that, he returned to Newfoundland, where he participated in a series of meetings regarding Confederation and Canadian and Newfoundland becoming one country in 1894. He'd also campaigned for Newfoundland General Confederation back in 1888. In any case, the talks got nowhere, and the idea was abandoned, ultimately. But in 1894, he returned to London, England, but was quickly moved back to Newfoundland. Ambrose Shea died in St. John's, Newfoundland, aged 89, in 1905. Joseph Robert Joey Smallwood was born in Gambo, Newfoundland, in 1900. In fact, when he was born, there were still 8 original Fathers of Confederation alive. Was the man who finally led the dominion of Newfoundland into Canadian Confederation as Canada's 10th and final province in 1949. At the time, he was often called, and he himself often said that he was, quote, the only living father of Confederation. But by 1949, the Dominion of Newfoundland had no other option but to join Canadian Confederation as Canada's very last province. As for Joey Smallwood personally, he first worked as an apprentice at St. John's newspaper shop until he was a teenager in the 1910s. By 1920, he had moved to New York and became something of a socialist, which would define him off and on politically for the rest of his life. It was also during his time in New York City that he met his wife and worked for a socialist newspaper in New York City called the New York Call. After a short time in New York City, he then returned to Newfoundland and started his own business newspapers in Corner Book in 1925. He would continue to work off and on as a journalist and newspaper owner until 1943. He worked for a short time during the Great Depression in the 1930s and early 1940s as a radio announcer, which no doubt helped his political aspirations later in life. In terms of politics, Smallwood got his first start as the campaign manager for the Liberal Party for the Prime Minister of Newfoundland, Sir Richard Squires, in 1928. Smallwood himself ran unsuccessfully for a seat in the 1932 election. In 1935, rioters stormed the Parliament of Newfoundland, and Joey Smallwood had disguised the Prime Minister, Sir Richard Squires, as a clergyman who was then hustled away in a taxicab. Squires had gotten involved in some very bad and corrupt business deals, while the rest of Newfoundland was suffering from the full effects of the Great Depression at the time. Indeed, prosperity never really returned to Newfoundland until after the German Confederation in 1949. In any case, responsible government was then suspended indefinitely, and a council of 6 men, made up of 3 Newfoundlanders and 3 British Crown appointees, along with the Governor-General of Newfoundland, who was also a British Crown appointee, ran Newfoundland from 1936 to 1949. So, in effect, during that period, although they still had the title of the Dominion of Newfoundland, the people had voted to end their independence and return to colonial status, not Dominion status, in a national referendum on the topic in 1936. After the Great Depression ended with the start of World War II in 1939, there was really no hope for them in Newfoundland. In the 1949 referendum, they voted to join Canada by 53%, along with the reinstatement of responsible government. This was the result of the Newfoundland National Convention, which led to Canadian Confederation for Newfoundland in 1949. This was chosen as a third option to join Canada rather than remaining independent with responsible government, or even joining the United States was an option. Smallwood was also a delegate to the Newfoundland National Convention in 1949. When Newfoundland became Canada's last province on March 31st, 1949, little did people realize that Jerry Smallwood would be their premier from 1949 to 1973, or 23 years non-stop, which makes him the longest-serving premier in Canadian history. Indeed, he's even the longest-serving politician in terms of leadership of a province. While he was the first premier of Newfoundland during this amazing 23 years in office, Smallwood introduced Newfoundland the concept of the welfare state. This included all the social security measures that are no longer taken for granted and which are paid for in part by the federal government and in part by the individual provinces and territories of Canada, depending on the constitutional setup of each individual social security system. He also greatly improved the economy by this means. He was often all too quick to call in the RCMP, Canada's National Police Force, as well as the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, Newfoundland's traditional police force that goes all the way back to 1729. He was particularly heavily criticized when he declared a number of forestry, lumber, and pulp and paper unions illegal in the late 1950s and 1960s, which became even more controversial when he used the police forces to break up illegal strikes and union meetings during a series of different strikes in 1959. He also encouraged foreign investment, which alienated labor unions even more. This was all done in an attempt to industrialize Newfoundland post-1949. Smallwood often regarded as being a very authoritarian premier, who picked very weak cabinet ministers, and he viewed them as being simply an extension of his own very strong-willed opinions on different government policies of the day. He then pulled the government's funding and personally sued a number of different newspapers because he didn't like what was printed in them. He also refused to have a question period like every other provincial legislatures and parliaments do daily. In 1969, Smallwood announced he was retiring, only to change his mind, and he ran a leadership race, which he won, and he thus retained the position as leader of the Liberal Party, and therefore the premiership after that. His final downfall came in 1971, when the Newfoundland Liberal government won 20 seats opposed to 21 seats by the Conservative Party. Under normal circumstances, he would have lost the election, but then with the help of one independent politician, who was a politician with no political affiliations, who defeated the Liberals. The result of the legislative deadlock was 21 Liberals versus 21 Conservatives. In early 1972, he resigned as Premier of Newfoundland, and his government then fell into internal strife and bickering among old enemies, and was defeated by the Conservatives in a non-confidence vote a few weeks later. He then lost another vote of confidence and was in office as the Liberal Party leader in 1972. Not to be outdone entirely, Smallwood formed the Newfoundland Reformers Party with some of his old Liberal Party colleagues in 1972 and retained a seat in the legislature. Then in 1974, he and other 4 people were elected in the provincial legislature. He served as party leader and as a member of the legislature until his retirement in 1977. Then the Newfoundland Reformers Party broke up into 2 parties, the Labour Party of Newfoundland and the Newfoundland Reformers. This caused political parties to fall apart, and most of the members defected to the Liberal Party in 1977. As for Jerry Smallwood, personally, he continued to write books, including his personal memoirs called I Chose Canada. He also started the Newfoundland Book Publishers Limited in 1967 and was always a very prolific writer in his lifetime. He served 5-volume Encyclopedia of Newfoundland and Labrador History, and the first volume coming out in 1971, the second in 1984. Then Joey Smallwood had a major stroke and wasn't able to continue writing the book series, but his descendants and the Joey Smallwood Foundation wrote the other 3 volumes between 1987 and 1994. Joey Smallwood died just a week short of his 91st birthday, aged 90 years old of a stroke, on December 17th, 1991, in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador.